Sup? Yo! Low.
Sipiolo! What's up, guys? Welcome to the second episode of Sipiolo. Today, I have one of my very good personal friends, Matt Ervin.
How's it going?
He is a professional photographer. Everything he's doing is extremely unique in the world of photography because the way that he sees things is... Well, why would I explain it? That's why he's here, right? Alright, so, Matt, why don't you tell us, where do you come from?
So, I'm from Berkeley, which for those of you who don't know, it's about 15 minutes away from Detroit. I went to high school there. I spent a good amount of my childhood there, and it's where I kind of met Dalton at vocational high school.
We were studying auto mechanics at the time. Obviously, our worlds have flipped quite a bit.
Yeah, but we know how to work on cars, dude.
Yes.
I took one photography class in freshman year of high school.
Okay.
And I got into it a little bit and started doing like nature pictures and whatnot. I got a camera as a present.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with just taking pictures.
So you started your photography freshman year of high school?
Thereabouts, probably in between 8th grade and freshman year.
Awesome.
So,
and when did you start actually taking it seriously?
about a year and a half to 2 years ago. Somewhere in between there. So pretty recent.
Where does your inspiration come from? Where does that eye that is so hard to find in people come from for you?
It's very simple. It's just perspective, and every single human on this earth has a perspective, and it's very different, and you don't understand other people's perspectives unless you see it for yourself. So most of my creativity with people, whether it be a portrait or whether it be a city that somebody lives in, is what is their life like? What is it like to be in their shoes? What kind of emotion can I show?
Right.
Just the little things that people don't pay attention to in photos, those give me a lot of inspiration because people like me see them.
And that's one thing that I really enjoy about looking at your photography is I actually feel like I'm stepping into the location or I'm in front of the person that I'm looking at when I look at your pictures. It's not like I'm looking at this from an outsider's perspective. You guys know what I mean? Matt, who would you say is your biggest supporter?
Probably my good friend Devin, who created the art company that I work for.
Oh, you work for an art company?
Yes.
What's it called?
It's called Moxie Art Co., and that's MOXIE.co on any web browser.
Awesome. What is Moxie's mission? What is their focus?
So Moxie is a family through art. It's a small community of artists, and we work together on projects and work together on client work and just bouncing ideas and growing as artists with each other.
That's
but
beautiful.
It's also for everybody to look at and be a part of themselves, just with appreciation for art.
What do you use to shoot all of your pictures on, man?
It is a Nikon D70-100, and I have a 50 millimeter lens on there. With an aperture of 1.4. When you take portraits, aperture is very important, and the lower that aperture goes, the more depth of field that you're able to achieve, the more you're able to blur backgrounds and get that professional look that people love. And then I put a flash up here because I shoot in dark lit studios a lot. I work with hip-hop artists in Detroit primarily. And then I have a grip down here that is not part of my camera. It's an extra thing that I added, and it screws on. That way, I have a shutter button, which a shutter button is what takes the picture. I have one up here, but for when shooting portraits, I often will shoot them vertical, so I get more of the subject's torso, and I have another button right here. So it's much more comfortable for me to do that instead of holding my wrist and having a weird angle.
That thing looks like it weighs quite a bit. Could I hold that?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like a newborn baby.
Wow. Yeah, that's gotta be about 5 or 8 pounds, man. So a minute ago you mentioned working with a rapper?
Yeah,
Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
I mainly work with one group right now. They're called Band Gang. I do their concerts. I do their shows and meet and greets and all their shoots for album covers. I even show up if they're just having a night at the studio and they need somebody to take some pictures. They like things documented.
I think it's about time that we take a look at your photography.
This is a group that I just worked with, and their name is Shelby 5. There is a music label in LA called Dark Child. They have done artists such as Beyonce, early Beyonce and Destiny's Child,
Nice.
Sam Smith. this is one of their new signings out of Detroit.
Out of Detroit?
Yeah, it's a small group of 5
Sapiola.
brothers and sisters.
I just love how you got the reflection of the water. Did it just rain this day or something like that?
It is raining during this picture, and also what to look at here is on the bottom where there's kind of like a red haze.
Right.
That was achieved by putting my camera lens inside a flower pot that had pink flowers.
No way.
So all that pink is down there is just out of focus flowers.
I would have never been able to guess that. Comment below if you could.
So this is a Chicago
That is
high-rise.
gorgeous, man. That is beautiful.
Yeah. And no, it is not actually orange. It's not an orange color at all. That high-rise is actually just white and black.
Wow.
But, originally, I took the photo, and when I was editing it, I turned it black and white and turned the sky around the building very, very white, so that once it was on Instagram, that white kind of blended in with the app's color itself.
I've never thought about that. What did you just say? Yeah.
Oftentimes, I will match the white in my black and white pictures with the white on Instagram, so that when people are scrolling, this now looks like a floating building on their Instagram feed. They don't see the
Pro
border
tip.
of an image.
I never knew that.
They just see the subject,
Wow.
and it kind of floats in their feed and adds the extra
Yeah.
to, you know?
I really love the color choice that you did because it almost makes it look like that building's made out of wood.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
It gives it like a unique kind of thing. You don't really know what's going on. It's like, is it like sunset? Is it sunrise? Or like, are those lights? You know, what's it made out of?
Yeah,
It makes
seriously.
you ask questions. So
Wow.
this is a building. This is an old auto factory. It's a very
so
popular
creative.
thing.
Do you see like what he does with all of these locations and these people? It's like he actually puts his own perspective on it, and it's a completely different turn on each picture. It's gorgeous.
So this one is like, I really digged the colors of these bricks right here. It kind of had that cool blue. So when editing it, I took that cool blue and I put it in the sky. Because
Yeah.
the sky was where all my light was coming from. So I wanted
Wow.
that color to rain down on this image.
Usually, when you take the saturation away from every other color in a picture, but then you leave the saturation and bring it up for only one color, usually that color, especially with red being a prime color, would be very evident in like the bricks or even the pole or something like that. So I'm really curious about how you manage to eliminate the red from things that aren't the main focus.
Right. So that's a very important point to make. So what you do in that situation, because you're right, most of these bricks were orange or orange hue, so they had red in them. So
Right.
when I desaturated the other colors and I left red, there was still, like he said, a lot of red in this photograph. So what I did after that was I took a brush in my software, which I use Adobe Lightroom. So I take a little brush and I set the settings so it desaturates all the colors that it overlays, and then I trace over everything in the picture except what I want to be red. A year and a half later, I'm doing stuff like this with Band Gang.
Oh my
And
gosh,
this is
man.
Band Gang Rose here. This was on the set of a music video, his latest one that just came out.
That is a completely different style, man. I love the use of color in that one. Like in the last one, red was the only color, but in this one,
Right.
I don't think there's a color you're missing.
Yeah, I
And that's
think
beautiful.
I think there was a time and a place I didn't know what to do with all of the colors. But nowadays I've trained myself in so many ways with so many specific colors and color groups that like I feel confident. And this was on the set of a shoot where they had a Bentley doing donuts in a big dirt parking lot, and they were throwing hundreds out of the car. So that's why there's hundreds everywhere on the ground in this picture, one
Okay.
dropping from his hand.
Yeah.
If you look over on the top right of his head, there's a torn hundred in the corner flying through the air.
Oh, is that what that is?
That's what that is.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a picture that I took outside the GM building in downtown Detroit. They have a restaurant on the lowest floor, on the ground floor, that has red lights on the outside of the building. I remember having him stand with the side of his body towards the light, so I was only seeing his profile of his face, and then I said, "Look at me." And he turned and looked at me, and I snapped. And that was the shot that came from that.
First take, that's amazing.
Yep. And the reason what makes this my favorite shot though is just the clarity within each piece of hair in his beard.
Seriously.
Down to the colors of the pupils of his eyes. It's all about where you pose your models in relevance to your like geological standing.
Okay.
If the sun is setting behind you, or there's multiple light sources of a city behind you, and you're trying to capture this background light, you don't want to pose your model so that all the lights are behind them. You need something to be casted on the subject, on the face of the subject, on the front of the subject. Not everything can be behind and be represented in that way. So there's a balance to every photograph, and there's so much that people don't see.
Yeah, man, and that's another one of the things that I really appreciate about you as a photographer. You take photography to an artistic level, and that's beauty, man. Like that's what we're trying to do here is support the people who are truly passionate about the art that they're involved in. And that's one thing that I find is super radiant in you, and I hope that other people can see that too. Comment below if you guys feel the same way I do. Matt, thank you so much for going in depth with your photography. Why don't you tell us a little bit about anything coming up that our followers can look for you at?
Right. So summer jams, which Chris Brown will be there, Rich the Kid will be there.
That's huge.
Exactly.
That's huge.
T Grizzly may be there. I'm not quite sure about that yet. But the group I work with will also be there, Band Gang, and that's going to be at DTE on July 25th. And that's summer jams again, like I said. And all those artists are going to be performing. It's going to be wild. It's going to be a good concert to go to. But I will be shooting that concert. So if you attend, you might see me on stage. So
seriously, look out for him.
Time.
Matt is an amazing photographer, and if you're lucky, you might get in one of his shots. How can we find you, Matt?
Right. So Instagram is my main platform for all my work right now.
Understood.
I have a few more platforms that I'm working on, including a website, but that's all going to come in due time. Right now, you can find me on Instagram at matt.charles. I work with people who I feel like they're on the same level with me, that I feel the same energy with, right?
Right. The same passion for the art that you work in.
Right. And that's all it's really about at the end of the day. It's about the passion, and the passion for other artists as well.
Right.
Which is why I also salute you for asking people to do interviews.
Thank
and
you.
Stuff,
No, I'm so honored that you would give me the time of day to come onto this show and express yourself and tell everybody about why you do what you do and how you do it.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. So, before I let you go, guys, you know what's going to happen now. Matt, will you give us a walkthrough of how you edit one of your pictures and just show us a little bit of an inside, please?
Yeah, I'll do a little quick one. Alright, so here is how I would edit a picture. I have this picture here, subject is sitting on the couch, and he's looking off in the distance. I like the lighting, it's kind of like warm, and the couch looks cool. Almost the first thing I do with almost all my photographs is I'm going to bump up this clarity a little bit, just so I can see really where the focus is at in this image. And then what I'm going to do after that is remove what I did not like earlier, which was that light switch up there. To get rid of that gray color, you see what my highlights does there? So I'm going to up the highlights a bit. So I'm just going to up it until it reduces that gray a little bit, and then I'm going to come in with a brush, and I am going to boost the whites in it. And I'm going to come around here, and I'm going to brush this. This part of it is the biggest part to pay attention to when I'm showing you how to edit a picture, and that's split toning. If you don't know what it is and you take pictures, look it up and research it. It'll be your best friend. But split toning is when you can change the tones and the colors of your highlights and shadows without changing the entire image itself. And I have a special number that I use for each my highlights and shadows, and that number is the hue of color in the color wheel, basically, in Lightroom. And so I have the hue bar here, which you can change by manually dragging this, or you can be like me and have done it so many monotonous times you remember exactly what you like. And the saturation bar right beneath it is basically what controls this color coming out. So if I turn that on 100, you can see where all the highlights of my image are. They just turned that bluish green kind of color. And in the shadows, if I turn that up 100%, you see all my shadows there and how they turn kind of that light orange. But of course I don't want my picture to be that dramatically colored. That looks terrible. So I'm going to take both of these back down to 0, and I'm going to slowly introduce my highlights first until I reach a point that my eyes agree with it most. So that's going to be like around right here because it's subtle, but and you can see it, but it's not too much. And then I'm going to go down to the shadows, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start to introduce those just a little bit. Right? And now my shadows are about there, where I want them. But now that I'm looking at it, now that I got all these colors right, this brush stroke that I made up here was a little too bright earlier. So I'm going to take that down a little bit. Because I actually kind of like the blues that are starting to come in here. So I'm going to tone that down just a little bit. Just like that. And other than that, I might check like the temperature of my image. It's looking a little warm to me right now. So I'm going to cool it down ever so slightly with my finger on this bar over here. And once I get it to about there, that's a quick edit for me right there. So you can see the before and after. The before, it's really warm. There's a limited amount of like range of colors, and that ugly light switch is behind him. And afterwards, it's not there. It's much more of a chilled picture while still retaining warmth in his skin tones, and we got some nice colors introduced. So yeah, that's how I would do it.
Thank you so much for doing that, Matt. Thank you guys for watching the second episode of Sapiolo. Matt, do you have any last words?
Subscribe to his channel. Get ready to see some more videos in the future and a lot of improvement. And check me out on Instagram.
Hang loose.